Captain Midnight.
This video is brought to you by Curiosity Stream. So, National Treasure was a sleeper hit in 2004, and it produced a sequel that did even better in 2007, at least at the box office. And then, nothing. Now, I want to be clear right from the start, I don't desperately need another National Treasure. Like, I'm not agonizing over when I can see Ben Gates and the gang back in action or anything. In Patrick Willems' video, A Mild Celebration of Pretty Good Movies, National Treasure is one of the films he chooses to highlight as, well, pretty good. And I would agree with that assessment. National Treasure is a movie I've seen at least a dozen times. I mean, it came out when I was 11, pretty much the ideal age for a PG-rated Disney adventure movie. Sure, I liked Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade a lot more, but National Treasure slotted into that rotation of movies that I would watch and rewatch on DVD a lot. The kind of thing that a teacher could show in class during the lazy last week of school, and no one would complain too much. And I think there's a place for those kinds of movies. The point of this video isn't to say that National Treasure is a masterpiece or anything, but to take a closer look at why it seems to have gone away completely. I mean, that's a little strange, right? It's a family-friendly brand owned by a company more hellbent on making money off its old property than basically anyone else out there. Yet when it comes to National Treasure, there's been nothing more than a vague promise of a still unannounced Disney Plus show. Why is that? That's something that I wanted to take a closer look at here, and hopefully shed some light on what made Disney turn its back on National Treasure.
The back of the
Declaration of Independence.
Use the DVD menus to unlock clues that take you on your own treasure hunt.
What do you see?
There's more to the riddle.
So in case you thought I was damning the movie with faint praise earlier, let me say this. It is extremely hard to make a good action-filled treasure hunting adventure movie in the style of Indiana Jones. Like, on paper, it might sound pretty easy. All the ingredients are there. Treasure maps, historical artifacts, chases, romance, villainy. The stuff pulp novels have been doing forever. But how many of those movies actually work? Some of the first post-Raiders of the Lost Ark attempts, like 1985's King Solomon's Mines, which tried to revive interest in the Alan Quartermain character, just fell flat on their face. The Tomb Raider movies are kind of whatever. Romancing the Stone is okay. I loved Sahara as a kid, but apparently I was the only one because that movie was a huge flop. When it comes to doing this in the 90s and the 2000s, National Treasure and 1999's The Mummy probably did it best. I mean, National Treasure kind of did it better than Indy himself managed to when he returned to theaters in 2008. So I definitely have a soft spot for this movie. And after both it and its sequel did so well, it seemed like a no-brainer that they would just keep producing them. So I have to return to the question, why didn't they? Well, according to National Treasure executive producer Jason Reed, quote, "What I felt happened is even though the movies were extremely successful and had a really strong fan base, it's a movie that gets brought up all the time, the company was never able to capitalize on it as a franchise. It was more of a movie with a sequel, and National Treasure 3 would have just been another sequel." I've always found this quote really interesting, because at first glance, I didn't really agree. Like, National Treasure makes perfect sense as a franchise. It's got a fun cast of characters that you could slot into all sorts of adventures. That doesn't mean the movies would be great films or anything, but in terms of setup for sequels, a group of treasure hunting friends is a very solid one. So then, what's the problem? Well, Reed's other quote sheds some more interesting light on things. They never figured out a way to integrate it into the parks. And I think that's where it really clicked for me. National Treasure never became a franchise in the same way that most other big Disney properties do because it lacks the kind of instantly recognizable iconography that things like Star Wars, Marvel, and even Indiana Jones have in spades. Disney is a massive global company, with the actual films coming out and making money just one aspect of what they want from a property. They need to be able to do a lot of different things. Like, for one small example, sell Halloween costumes. You can do that with Iron Man, Ariel, or Darth Vader and Kylo Ren. It's a bit harder to sell one of Nicolas Cage holding the Declaration of Independence. I mean, I would give any kid dressed as Nick Cage on Halloween extra candy for sure, but it's easy to see why it's not exactly gonna catch on. They need these instantly recognizable characters to plaster everywhere, where the actor is almost secondary. Like, maybe not in terms of the movies themselves, but definitely in the way that they're put all over parks, toys, and just about everything else. You ever noticed how the Disney Plus intro for Star Wars features all the famous masks of the Star Wars universe? And in the case of The Mandalorian, it literally leads into a show about a guy who hardly ever takes off his mask. That's not an accident, that's Disney capitalizing on the iconography of that franchise. You have to negotiate with actors for their likenesses. You don't have to negotiate with the mask. And those are able to be more easily recognized at any age around the world. And speaking of the world, I think another huge drawback for the National Treasure franchise is kind of right there in the name, national. Like, the story of the film is about as America-centric as it gets. Instead of globe-trotting through different countries, National Treasure is nearly all set in the eastern United States, with a plot that revolves around the American Founding Fathers and our Declaration of Independence. I mean, the main character's name is Benjamin Franklin Gates, and the guy worships American history. Understandably, that's just not going to travel as well as something like The Avengers. And in a film landscape where foreign box office numbers matter more and more, that's probably an issue. National Treasure was a success, a pretty big one. But I think in the end, it was a victim of its parent company's even bigger success. The Disney of the early 2000s was perfectly happy to just have a hit movie, but after acquiring Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilm, and becoming the monolithic entertainment juggernaut that we know today, making a healthy profit at the domestic box office isn't enough. Your movie has to have at least the potential to be a global, multifaceted brand, and I don't think National Treasure had that, at least in Disney's eyes. And you know what? I'm pretty okay with that. Anyone who watches my channel will know that I love seeing how new writers interpret and use older characters. But obviously, not everything needs a sequel. I mean, to be honest, I didn't really like the one sequel we did get all that much. The first movie is a fun, light adventure that feels about as 2004 as a movie can, and there's nothing wrong with that. And even though we haven't heard a single update on it in over a year now, I wouldn't be surprised if that Disney Plus show eventually does actually happen, but it will apparently star a younger cast. And at that point, why bother? Love him or hate him, Nicolas Cage brings so much earnestness to the role of Benjamin Franklin Gates. His team have a likable and fun energy, and Sean Bean gives the movie some real gravitas as the villain. They're what made National Treasure stand out from the 1,000 other family-friendly adventure movies through the years. Without them, you might as well just watch The Librarians on TNT. So if they do end up making a show, I really hope that Cage and the rest of the cast are at least involved in some capacity. Because a lot of the attempts to do a film like this are forgettable through and through, but National Treasure, a movie about Nicolas Cage stealing the Declaration of Independence, just doesn't have that problem. But a new cast just having adventures that involve American history doesn't sound all that interesting, at least to me.
Oh, let me guess. It's the wrong time. It's the wrong place. I'm wrong again. Wrong about us. Wrong about Thomas Gates.
So those are my thoughts on National Treasure, but I want to hear what you think. Would you want to see a third entry in the series after all these years? Does the idea of a TV show get you excited at all? And do you think they could even pull it off without Cage in the gang? I'll be sure to read your comments down below. Oh, and if National Treasure puts you in the mood to check out some actual history, complete with priceless artifacts, check out The True Story of King Tut's Tomb on Curiosity Stream. This recent documentary is the best look I've ever seen on the subject, where scientists use new methods to understand more about the history of the tomb, and maybe more importantly, everything that was in it. Curiosity Stream has a ton of great docs on a lot of subjects, but if you're looking for more of me, you're also in luck. Bundled with a subscription is another service, Nebula. I have 2 exclusive videos on there covering the title sequences of Cheers and Rick and Morty in the working title sequence, and there is just tons of stuff over there. H-Bomber Guy has covered True Detective, Nando V Movies has covered One Punch Man. It's just a great place for creators to create independently. And when you combine that with CuriosityStream's documentaries on science, nature, history, and more, you have a great deal. You can get it all for $14.79. Not for a month, for an entire year. That's a 26% discount. So get the deal now by going to curiositystream.com/captainmidnight. That's curiositystream.com/captainmidnight.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.